Good morning or good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. I'm Nishanti Nehru, or Nisha. Everybody calls me Nisha. And today we're exploring a topic at the heart of the corporate governance. Who can serve as a director, and what exactly does that role entail? From responsibilities to risks. We need to know what we're dealing with in order to become a director because directors have a lot of responsibilities. So, a little bit about myself. So, I have a background in several areas of law. I come from 8 years of experience with court services and further experience in the legal field. I have been able to deal with matters in family law, civil litigation, criminal law, and divisional court and other areas. I also have years of customer service experience in which I have dealt with several different public members. I've also, in court services, have closely worked with judges, lawyers, and legal staff. And my experience is quite lengthy, but I'm always willing to learn and always willing to understand what's going on in the new field. And that is something that I always encourage everybody because the law is always constantly changing and we always have to keep up to date no matter what happens, what circumstances we're in. So now today, let's talk about what is a director. Directors oversee corporate affairs. They participate in governance. They provide strategic direction. A director operates at the governance level of the corporation. What does that mean? They are the head of the corporation. They oversee everything, including long-term planning and ensuring the organization meets its obligation. And these obligations are not just they're not always given to them. It depends on the business structure. So once a business structure is created, we want to know what the director's responsibilities are. And most of the time, you will need to know how to decide these informations, because if you leave it open to without a bylaw or without a governance indicating what the roles and responsibilities of directors are, you're leaving it open to risks and liabilities. So these are things to consider while you're creating a corporation. It's important because you never know what will happen long term if the corporation is actually becoming successful and you gain more individuals, or if you're in a relationship with family members who are shareholders. So at this point, you need someone who is able to take a managing role. And you need to be able to understand how to decide and what those roles are going to be and what their responsibilities are going to be. But first, let's talk about eligibility criteria in Canada. This is important because for a director to become a director, you will be required to have several requirements. And one of those is you have to be over 18 years old. Well, maybe you might not be able to deal with a 16-year-old if they are a director. They might have to have a parent who's 18-year-old who can be the director of the corporation. And you cannot be in a bankrupt or financial hardship situation. This is imperative because a director has to be morally and financially responsible in their roles. And you have to be legally and mentally competent. That means that you cannot have you have to be able to make decisions and not have a capacity issue where you will most likely need someone else's assistant to be able to make the decisions on a day-to-day basis, because directors are always operating for at least 18 months, depending on how these directors are brought into the role they are playing. So, categories of directors. This is important. As I indicated, the roles are brought into the corporations, and in so doing, you get elected as by the shareholders or members, or you can be appointed if you have a minimum amount of shareholders, and they all appoint. There is a shareholder who owns a higher percentage or 51% of the corporation. They have the right to elect their directors, right to appoint their directors in that capacity. And it may be internal employees or external independent. So depending on the shareholders of the corporation, they can decide through their shareholders agreement how to elect or how to appoint these directors and what type of directors they want. Because if you are running a corporation that is a multi-million dollar corporation, and it is necessary that you have a director that understands the financial risks and the risk management strategies before you will put them into position as directors. So you might want to hire someone who has an expertise within 10, 15, 20 years, who knows, depending on your depending on who you actually like. You can put a post out and directors can be viable that way. Or you can hire a agency to look for those directors who have experience in, let's say, you're producing textiles and like clothing. You want to be able to have a director who understands how the material world works, how how to sell these products, or how to obtain individuals who are experts in those areas to be able to sell those products. So these are things to be considered. So this is how we elect directors. Role of a director. The role of a director is to oversee a company's direction, ensure compliance with laws, and accountability for decisions. This is important. Why is this important? Because directors and officers owe statutory fiduciary duties to the corporation. The corporation is an entity, and as an entity, it has to have rights and respond. Like if you go to court and the entity is been wronged, the director can become liable. So these are things we have to consider. And the director also has a duty of care to the corporation and must be taking into consideration the stakeholders like creditors or shareholders or any individuals who are actually investing in the corporation, because the directors have the responsibility of making sure those financial investments are kept safe and protected, and actually they're growing in the long run. That is the responsibility that they have as directors. Most directors are also prohibited from being indemnified. And this is an important fact that we need to know, because directors cannot be indemnified from their corporate or from their responsibility as a director and their fiduciary roles. Fiduciary duties, what are they? This is important because directors have to actually abide by this. This is something that you're actually doing in essence to protect the corporation, because the corporation is an entity. Just think of it as a child. The child is not able to speak for itself. So who's going to speak for them? The parent or the guardian or the lawyer. And this is where the director's responsibilities come. They're physically responsible to speak for this child in similarity with a corporation. They are responsible to speak with for the corporation and for the corporation's best interests. So in so doing, they have the requirement to act honestly, in good faith, and in the best interest of the corporation. They should also avoid conflicts of interest, and they have a duty of loyalty and act selflessly. But they also have to act with candor and honesty. These are all requirements of a director. Are they doing everything in the best interest of the corporation? Are they acting as the corporation requires them to do? Let's just say if they're doing a business transaction, is it going to negatively affect, or is it a risky business venture? And are they presenting this information to the stakeholders? The stakeholders, again, as I said, are shareholders, creditors, investors, anyone who has an interest in the organization. In so doing, these directors have a responsibility to make sure that they have actually looked at all of these facts. Are they doing their best in an honest and in good faith? And are they making sure there's no conflicts in their investment? Are the shareholders and any investments or any kind of projects that are coming in, are there going to be any conflicts there? They need to disclose these information. Is there nepotism? Is there a relationship between the director and those organizations that are bringing in those the projects that they're planning to actually continue? These are considerations that should be taken before jumping into an adventure. Sorry, a venture, so that you don't have any issues or liabilities as a director. Duty of care. So, in this capacity, the duty of care owed to the corporation includes several things, including directors. They have a duty of care to the directors, duty of care to also the stakeholders. It is important to remember that the interests of the shareholders, employees, retirees, and pensioners, consumers, also we have to consider the government. If there's filing requirements or there is any business I guess, contracts with the government. Those are considerations to be looked at. Also, any environmental requirements. Sometimes projects like building projects go into specific areas where they have to follow environmental regulations. And are they building everything in a safe structure that will not cause damage to the building or the environment itself? These are also important to look at before you actually jump into a project, because as directors, you have a high duty of care and you can become liable for any breach of these duty of cares. Then there's the standard of care. The standard of care is important because it gives you the roles of directors and it also gives you the requirements, like what is involved? Are they required to attend specific meetings? They have yearly meetings, but is there a monthly meeting that they need to conduct in order to understand what's going on? Like if they have officers, accountant, officer, they have we have different roles in corporations. Sometimes we'll have officers who are guided as financial officers and executive officers or marketing officers. Those individuals may be required to report to the director, and this may have to be done on a monthly basis to be able to make sure that you have an understanding of what your role is, how you're dealing with these individuals, and what are the perception of the corporation going forward. What are the requirements to be met by the director? Are they required to provide financial statements every few months, or are they required to provide it every year? In general meetings with shareholders, you are required to provide financial statements every, I think, 12 months. Every 12 months. The first time it's usually 18 months. You can wait to the 18th month mark, but after that, it's usually 12 months. So considering all of these things, you might want to have a standard of care where you provide the director with a minimum amount of information, understanding of the business, attending meetings, understanding the issues that may arise at the meetings, seeking appropriate advice if necessary from specialized individuals. Sometimes a director is hired for a specific reason, like they're there to financially manage the corporation. So their responsibilities have to be to the financial management. Sometimes the director is there to have, there are marketing directors that you can make them only there to bring the corporation into a new era of success and grow the business. So there's different responsibilities. So think about all these concepts. What kind of director are you hiring and what are their roles? And what would you like them to be able to do? So they know their clear role and their standard of care that needs to be met. There's also financial oversight. This is important because directors have a financial responsibility. They are expected to understand and approve financial decisions and ensure transparency. This is important because you must review the requirements of your corporation, and you must also make sure that the corporation is not going at a loss on a continuous basis, because at this point, you might end up having a corporation build to an extent of having millions of dollars. And then, if there is a continuous loss, at that point, the corporation might have to declare bankruptcy if they have employees. They have resources that they have creditors, they have all of these aspects. So ensure proper record keeping, monitor spending resources and allocation, and approve budgets and financial reports. These are all things that you should be doing on a regular basis as a director. So, legal liabilities. This is quite extensive, actually. It's not only unpaid taxes and or remittance. We put this here so you understand the basics, but we will be conducting a more thorough understanding of directors' responsibilities in a next seminar. But however, before that, I would like to say that this is important to all directors because you can be actually personally liable because of your failure to fulfill fiduciary duties and the standard of care that is required for you to actually operate the corporation, and the corporation's best interest is been neglected or has been misappropriated in some way. And these are considerations that are important because your role as a director will be affected, and you can incur a lawsuit against you if you do not comply with all the requirements as the corporations needed, because the shareholders have several different rights to be able to bring a litigation against you. But also, not only the shareholders, but external organizations or creditors can bring a litigation against you due to the fact that you have neglected or you have not paid the creditors due to your neglect in operating the organization to make it fall apart, or like make it literally dissolve or go bankrupt. These are considerations that you should need to take into account before you actually act and make decisions. So follow the regulatory guidelines and make sure that you are understanding your roles in that capacity as a director. Statutory obligations. This is something the directors should oversee, but they can also delegate to officers, or if there are multiple directors, they could have one director who is the managing director, and the other directors can be delegated to different various roles. In this capacity, tax remittance, employment standards can be delegated to officers who are, I guess, a accounting officer, or the financial officer, or the financial, not the financial, sorry, my apologies. Um, my The employment HR officer. So these are officers that can be hired for this specific purpose, but you have an obligation as a director to be overseeing these aspects and to making sure that they are accounted for, everything is flowing naturally, and that there are no issues or concerns to be dealt with. Because as a director, you will be responsible for the concerns and issues that come up, and you will have to deal with them accordingly and making sure that you're following your responsibilities to the corporation. This is important to make sure that you're dealing with each issue appropriately. So in this case, we put in directors in not-for-profit, but directors are not only in not-for-profit. Directors are also in charity organizations. Sometimes, well, they have board members, but sometimes they'll elect a director if it's a big corporation, big charity organization that needs to have managements. And the members will elect a director to be the managing director. There's also like, you have not-for-profits and you have corporations. Multiple different types of corporations have different types of directors. You will encounter that in some corporations, especially if they become bigger and bigger, to an extent that they are a multi-million-dollar corporation, or they are operating on various different um, locations. They'll have directors in each location, because it would be easier to manage one location with those directors rather than have all the locations go to one director in one area. Because you need to be able to monitor your organization based on your local situation and where you live. Depending on, like, let's say I live in Ontario, and I have a corporation, but I also build a corporation in the US. I cannot be at two places at once, but I have responsibility as a director to the corporation. So I can hire a director, or I can put 3, 4 directors in place in a different location and incorporate it in that location, but I have a corporation that oversees that corporation. So the complication there is that you will have to oversee that corporation, but you'll have one person, a director in that or location, reporting to you. If you have a multi-million-dollar corporation, you have multiple corporations. So think about all of these considerations. These are all different types of directors. They have different responsibilities and different roles, and need to be able to keep those roles separate, as well as being able to continue to deal with the issues that come up on a daily basis, and their fiduciary duty, as well as their standard of care and their duty of care. So, how would you protect yourself as a director from liability? Well, to minimize liability, you use your best business judgment rules, which is basically, when you conduct business, are you taking into account expert advice? Is there information that you need to be reviewing because you are not certain? Don't take any um, don't take any advice from other individuals if you're not certain that, like, this is a good investment. Do your own research. Make sure you're actually doing your due diligence as a director. Create a due diligence checklist. What are my requirements? If I'm doing an investment, how should I be doing this investment? What are the checks and balances that I need to consider? These are all things you need to focus on to protect yourself. But you also need to get insurance, because as a director, you're not guaranteed that you won't be sued. There is a possibility that you'll be sued by anybody, or even a creditor or another organization that says that you've wronged, or even a shareholder that says, okay, you've made mistakes as a director. And at this point, you have to consider these possibilities in order to be able to understand, okay, how am I going to defend myself? And you will need funds. And in order to have funds, insurance assists you with these funds. So think about all the facts that you need to consider. Your responsibility is important. Your fiduciary duty to the corporation. Are you doing everything in good faith and to the best of your ability? Are you doing your due diligence by checking off all of these aspects? And then, is this a business management rule that can be considered appropriate for your business. Even if it's a risk, it's done in the best interest of the corporation to advance the corporation. These are all considerations that should be made before you actually make your decision to become a director, and protect yourself for sure with every decision. Best practices for directors. Ask questions. This is important. If you're getting an investment, don't just accept it. And just because someone says they have knowledge and understanding or they have an expertise in this kind of business, do not just accept that, because they may be doing things that you are not 100% sure of. If they have ability to account for funds, or if they transfer funds in and out of your account and expect you to transfer those funds back, there is some considerations there that should be looked at, because your decisions in going forward with this individual, and the fact that you haven't asked the questions, can cause liability to you. You can be sued for all amounts of funds that was dealt with this other organization that you have no idea about. And you are confused because all you knew is, I am in a project and I have to deal with this project. But this individual is so experienced, they know what they're doing. But don't do that, because you need to ask those questions. You need to not accept that the person is knowledgeable, but make sure that you are knowledgeable. You are understanding your role. As a director, take that time to research, take that time to go and review their work. Take that time to indicate that the individual's role in your corporation and your role as a director, and how those roles are intermingling and how those roles are separate. Make sure you understand those. These are all kinds of things that you need to do, including accounting. If you hire a financial accountant, make sure you review their work. Are they doing it for the best of the corporation? If you need to get it reviewed by another accountant, an external accountant, do it. Don't wait to ask the question at the end of the day. You're the one who's going to be in that situation where you're getting sued for the funds that are disappearing from your account that you're not aware of, or you haven't been able to calculate where they are going. So consider all of these aspects. It is a possibility. All of these are possibilities. They're not always going to happen, and you may never encounter these situations, but why not just have a backup? Why not just make sure you protect yourself as a director and review all the resources and the information that's being brought to you? Check every person's work that you are responsible for, because a corporation and the creditors or stakeholders are going to hold you accountable, because you are the face of that organization for the time period which you are either elected or appointed to be director. So the key summary takeaways are: understand the role before accepting. Know your responsibilities. Ensure protections are in place. This is important because honestly, there's a lot of lawsuits that can occur because directors haven't actually considered all of their responsibilities, how to protect themselves against it. Have they done their due diligence in making sure that they've followed this fiduciary duties, the standards of care, the duty of care as well? And have they if they have breached any of these aspects, they have literally not been reviewing their work or reviewing the work of people they have employed. These are the reasons these situations come about. And you need to protect yourself and the organization, and make sure that the corporation is benefiting, not being drained of all the funds and being sued in the long run. Thank you so much for your time. It was really a pleasure to give you guys this information. And next week, we are going to speak a little bit, or not next week, sorry, the following week, we will be discussing further on directors. Next week, we'll have a special guest, so please look forward to that. And I'm excited for that experience. But we'll talk more and we'll discuss more about corporations, and not only corporations, but businesses. I'm excited to assist you guys in any which way that would help grow individuals and businesses to success. So please, if you have any questions as a corporation or an individual sole proprietor or partnership, any kind of legal basis, you can contact me and we can discuss it further from there. Thank you.